Hey everyone, before the show gets started, I want to let you know about an awesome event happening in the Queen City of Charlotte, North Carolina this Monday, December 10th. It's called Generosity in Spirits, Cocktails for Toys. Our boy Brian the Hammer LaRusso, former guest of the show and great friend of ours, brought it to my attention that he, along with 5 other amazing bartenders in Charlotte, decided to put together a great event that donated all proceeds to the Angel Tree so that they could spread some Christmas cheer to some special kids in Charlotte. Who's going to be there? Well, Kel Minton, the beverage director at Soul Gastro Lounge, Colleen Hughes, the bar manager, mixologist at Haberdish, Stefan Hubner of ... former guest of the show, Amanda Britton of Bardo, who is killing it out there, the legendary and former guest of the show, Bob Peters, and, of course, Brian the Hammer LaRusso, ranked 37th OKEist bartender in Charlotte. Just kidding. He's awesome. Come on out. It's at Gin Mill South End, December 10th, Monday from 5:30 to 8:30. There's a $20 cover, and all cocktails are $10 for the night. So remember, all the money that is raised that evening will go to the Angel Tree to provide Christmas cheer for some kids in Charlotte. And do me a favor, when you guys go to this event, snap some pictures, post them on Instagram, tag us at NCFB Pod so that we can see the community coming together to help out all the kids. Anyhow, thank you very much and enjoy the show.
You're listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast, coming to you from the Kitchen Studios, located high atop the historic Raleigh building, located in the heart of downtown Raleigh. The NCF&B Podcast takes you behind the scenes of North Carolina's food and beverage industry. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at NCFB Pod. This episode is sponsored in part by Food Scene. That's foodseen.com. Providing professional photography, social media management, video production, and website design. That's Food Scene. And now, the sommeliers to the stars, the barbacks in your backyard. It is Max and Matt.
Hello, and thank you for listening to the North Carolina Food and Beverage Podcast. I am your co-host, Max Trujillo.
And I am your co-host, Matthew Weiss. And today we are going to talk about coffee, but we're going to talk about it with a excellent Samaritan, the owner of First Farmers Coffee, Mr. Matt Hohler.
How's it going, guys?
Good. How are you?
Doing well. Happy to be here this morning. Made the 3-hour drive from Charlotte, and actually first time in Raleigh. So
Yeah, you said you were going to be late. You weren't late. You were right on time.
I was speeding.
Your first time in Raleigh?
Isn't that crazy?
Wow.
Yeah, I've only actually been in North Carolina for not even a year yet.
Okay.
So I am loving it, though. It's been absolutely phenomenal, and excited to get around more and more and spend a little more time here today in a beautiful little city.
Yeah, all right, good. So you'll see Raleigh from Virgin Eyes through,
There we go.
or sounds.
We'll take you on a tour. It'll be a guided tour, and we'll walk you through the whole area.
You get them on a bird.
Oh, yeah. We'll ride birds and then make everyone hate you.
So, Max, you met this guy over at the NCRLA Chef Showdown. Is that it?
Yeah, exactly. This guy who's across from us, who also is your Tokayo, Matthew. We were at North Carolina's Chef Showdown, Bartender Showdown. I was competing with Social House Vodka, making drinks, and I think you were there consuming cocktails.
Mostly. Mm-hmm.
Essentially.
Yeah.
No, but you also had, you were contributing your coffee to, like, the gift bags and all that.
Right, we did that with the gift bags and just did a little volunteering. Heidi Bellotto, awesome woman there in Charlotte, doing a lot with the local food scene, and she kind of gave the opportunity. I was like, I'd love to come, and it was a really awesome event.
Yeah. Well, then we were talking about coffee for a little while, and then you sent me some coffee, and really blew me away. I was like, whoa, man, this is really good stuff. So then I brought it to the office. We've been drinking it here. I think because this has all been in transition, so I think we actually did a podcast at my home studio before we got there, and that's where I made you some of that coffee before. That's like the night it was right here.
Yeah, that was a really good episode that day.
Yeah, you were on.
Yeah,
because of the
seriously.
Coffee. So let's get into this. There's a lot of stories about you with humanitarian rights and all, but you've done a lot of traveling, and in fact, one particular article was talking about your time in Peru.
Yep.
So maybe let's start right there and kind of figure out what started that journey for you.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, I could even rewind it a little bit further because It was about 5 years before when this all started to kind of come in motion. I actually was living in Honduras teaching English for a year. It was really I've been out of the country once or twice for a week at a time before that. And, the opportunity arose, and I decided to forego grad school and go teach English for a year.
So did you know what I meant when I said Matt's Tocayo? Does that make sense to you?
Are you saying are you using it like paisan, like countryman?
Tocayo is what you say to somebody that has your name.
Okay.
So you wouldn't say, hey, Matt, it's Matt. It just would be awkward saying your own name. So you say Tocayo, and that just means if you say it to somebody, it instantly acknowledges that you have their name.
So the funny part, I didn't speak a word of Spanish when I got to Honduras 5 years ago. So let's just move to this country and not know anything at all.
Sounds about right.
Which I'm much better now, but I have a long way to go still. I'm about 50% fluent, more or less. But so it just kind of seemed like the right adventure. That young 20s. What the heck am I supposed to do with my life? I'll go do this for a year. It sounds pretty good, and it was just completely eye-opening and challenging and adventurous and fun. And
you were there to teach children.
So I taught math, English, science, and literature to 7th and 8th grade, specifically in a small little town in near Lake Yohoa, which is the largest lake in the country, on the Santa Barbara mountain range, which is the second tallest mountain in the country as well. So it's actually a spot in Honduras where coffee is really ascending in regards to quality and just
Sounds beautiful.
It's absolutely gorgeous. I mean, it is beautiful, and just to paint a little bit of a picture of what Honduras was back then, it's improved somewhat now, but I was actually living about an hour away from the murder capital of the world, San Pedro Sula, Honduras. The drug
doesn't sound beautiful anymore.
It's a tale of two stories,
Yeah.
It everything you hear in the news and those sorts of things that paints this picture, it's not that it's not true, but it's certainly only half of that story. And I moved there and just had been there on a mission trip and just really felt like this was what I should do. And, luckily since then it is nowhere near the murder capital of the world anymore. It's like 25th. I think St. Louis, Detroit, Chicago, and Kansas City are all higher now. So it has improved quite a bit, but you're still looking at poverty. So much so that actually currently right now there's a caravan of over 4,000 immigrants walking from that city to the Mexican border trying to claim refugee status. Is actually a really big deal right now, and many of those people being coffee farmers. But
people trying to get into Mexico.
All the way through to the state.
Yeah, okay.
Using Mexico.
They're crossing
Gotcha.
Guatemala, Mexico, all the way through, risking their lives when Trump's made it clear that they're not crossing that border.
Right.
So it'll be interesting how it all unfolds, but it kind of paints a little bit of that picture of the poverty that exists behind it. I think the average income is around $2,500 for a family for the year, and it's a third world country in a lot of ways. I actually didn't even drink coffee when I moved there. I knew nothing about it, as most people really don't know much. I maybe had 5 cups in my life just to get through midterms in college and things like that, from the gas station.
Yeah. And
there was really nothing to do in this little town. We had our school, we had about 10 teachers, we were basically on top of each other, hanging out all the time, and the girls would, after school, the thing we would do is they'd make coffee, because a little pick me up, get you going, and they made it out of this little, what's called the bolsa or the sock, almost like a pour over, but very
low tech.
Very low tech. It's pretty cool actually when they make it, and it was just so sweet and delicious and unlike anything I ever experienced before. So slowly just kind of started to like it. But it was really when I came home for Christmas that it was a donation from my grandmother that kind of led this to all unfold. I kind of came home and went to visit her for the holidays, and she pulled me aside and handed me $1,000 and essentially instructed me to go do something with it. So as much as I appreciate the humanitarian comments, I really just feel like I'm the connector piece, and all these other people are doing good around me, and I just get to spread that love a little bit. But so I held on to that money.
You're a facilitator of humanitarianism.
It's not helping, it's creating opportunities is the way I like to look at it. So my grandma gave me that money. I went back for the rest of the year and really wanted it to be impactful, something that was important, something that worked well. And eventually a friend introduced me to a woman by the name of Sister Maria, who is an incredible woman who just pours out her entire life to her small community called El Tigre, which is a small coffee community. She feeds over 100 kids school meals each day. And with that $1,000, she was able to provide meat once a week for 4 months.
Wow.
So I just kind of took a step back and I was like, what? That's something we eat all the time. That wouldn't even be a thought. Once a week is what they're now going to get. So it's malnutrition, just a lot of issues behind all that. And I just started to kind of ask myself why. And the more I learned, a few other projects we did, it was a coffee community. And for whatever reason, I just got so captivated by this story that literally every single cup of coffee you've ever enjoyed took 60 hand-picked beans, connecting it to some other person in a faraway place with a very different story than the three of us share, right? So I just really got into that, and, I remember specifically just having so many viewpoints radically challenged of, come home, get a real job, get health insurance, grow up. Fighting that as hard as I can. But
we all are.
I just remember as that time came to close and it was, time to come back home and what do I do? And, that angst that was there, that I just remember kind of near the end of, how do I stay connected to this story? How do I remember this thing I learned? Because through Sister Maria and even just that country, that other side of that story as a whole, man, the people that have the least will give you everything they got. Whether it be a bed to sleep on, the nicest meal they can make you, whatever it might be, well before I ever wanted to come buy coffee from them. So it was really just a cultural difference that I learned there, and I was really inspired by it. So everything my life has kind of come to be over the last few years has really been about that specific sharing and that connection to that story of what can we learn on both sides of this equation to create something better for everybody, So in very much, it's not helping. It's about creating that opportunity. And so I moved back home, got into a few other things. I ended up doing some personal training down in Florida for 2 or 3 years. But
home for you was Ohio?
I'm from Ohio, so I've been a bit of a nomad over the last 8 years. Been all over the place. But I just started making pour-overs and learning the art of coffee, and I read about 10 books and just kind of went down this rabbit hole. And it was probably about 2014 when I started talking about, the following year, a coffee shop or, what can we do? And, I just really attached myself to that and got excited about it. And just because I was so amazed that we consume this so regularly and we never give a thought about it. It's like, give me my damn coffee. This is my drug. This is my, get me going. But there's just something so powerful of the way this connects us in the same way our meat does and our vegetables do, and those problems transcend into other areas as well. But so I went on to do a few other things. Ended up in Florida, moved back home to Ohio, pursued my master's of public health, and kind of came to the near end of that. And I kind of pursued that degree for other reasons outside of a real career path. That I kind of got to ask myself, okay, now's the time. I'm getting old. Better figure this out. What am I going to do? And, this idea had just been sitting in the back of my head. So I called up my now business partner, Bobby Durrett, who actually has lived in Honduras over the last 10 years. Similar story he has. But just immediately he was like, Matt, we can totally do it. Let's go for it. I'm in Peru right now. I'm studying my master's. I actually pulled him out of that program, which I think he's still a little bit mad at me because he really wants to finish that. But so I finished my degree and sold my car, got rid of most of the things I owned, and moved down to Peru with the sole ambition just to start this company and try to create something that's a little bit different. And
why Peru instead of Honduras, where you had originally been?
So I can tell you all the made-up reasons that sound great,
yeah.
But the real reason is he was there.
Okay.
And there's coffee there. And
what part of Peru is that? That's not Lima, right? You're more in.
So I spent most of my time in Lima,
okay.
But that's not where the coffee's coming from. So we source our coffee from the northern regions of Cajamarca, San Martin, and the Amazonas region. There's 13 regions basically running the line of Peru that do produce coffee, but Lima's at sea level. So and it's definitely not the climate for that. So we spent a lot of time there actually in coffee shops building the whole thing, creating the relationships with an importer that has an office there in Lima, which led us out to starting to create some connections, and creating a model that would be something that would really give these farmers an opportunity.
Nice. Just a quick side note for those people that don't know, go to Peru for coffee, but Lima is let me clarify, the single best food town I have ever been to, period.
I didn't know what I was...
You were talking about it like crazy when you got back.
He's so right. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. And I am so upset every time I try to go to a Peruvian restaurant in the United States because it is just not even close.
There's one that I think is pretty authentic.
Where's
it's
that?
Up in New York City on Amsterdam
Yeah.
in 101. It's
New
called
York.
Wari Kitchen.
Yeah.
And that's the only place I've been where they
They
hit
did right.
it. Yeah.
But the ingredients from the Amazon and just the culture they have around food is so beautiful, and it's so ingrained from the Incans hundreds of years ago to who they are. Especially if you get out to Cusco, through the Sacred Valley, and really just throughout Peru in general. It's just beautiful, and it's even just hard to describe what it is because I was there for 8 months, and it's just like you learn about some new dish every day, and you end up in a new region, and it's totally a different experience. But Lima is a very intimidating city. It's 10 million people.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that big.
It's huge. And if you
Put in perspective, Los Angeles is like 7 million people.
Yeah, in New York City, technically population is around 10 million. I mean, you have probably grows to like 12 to 14, or I'm not even sure what the exact number is during a business day, but
Right.
that's a sizable city.
Right, so you're never alone. I actually lived with a Peruvian family. There were 6 of us in a 3-bedroom apartment, and it was amazing. I love them to death. But my Peruvian mother would make me ají de gallina, which is one of my favorite dishes, like every Sunday, which is just like a chicken chili, this yellow sauce. With
Ají chilies, they're like A-J-I. Ají is a type of chili.
Yeah, but it's the specific Peruvian chili, and their food is just incredible. It's worth just to go eat your way through Lima.
Yeah, sorry, the food, Matt. Either Matt. The food of Peru it's rustic, right? It's like a lot of like roasted meats and rices and beans, but it's not like
but I think it's
not
also
like Mexican food.
No,
I mean, no, like spice-wise and stuff, you obviously have some similarities there, but not really. And I think what really sets it apart is because Lima is also somewhat coastal, so you have this unbelievable seafood mixed in as well, and the ceviche from there is unlike anywhere else.
You haven't had ceviche, if you haven't had Peruvian ceviche.
Absolutely.
By the way, and sorry, we're like little sidebar, but I'm so interested in Peru in general. I don't know if I've ever had Peruvian wine.
They don't.
They don't really make wine.
They make some wine, but
Pisco.
Yeah, that's what the pisco sour comes from.
Delicious,
they make a little wine in that region, which is in the southern area.
Yeah.
But it's not renowned. You get a little bit cooler in Chile and Argentina. It's better wine, I think.
Yeah. Stick to the coffee, boys.
But it's quite interesting, actually. Very carb heavy. A lot of dishes will have 2 carbs, potatoes and rice, and
plus those big corn. I forget what they call them. Choclo are super starchy also.
Yeah, and they did that specifically with the Andes Mountains. That extra energy you needed through the height to
get through
sustain yourself. So 6,000 types of potatoes, over 4,000 types of corn. So you could spend your life trying to eat your way through Peru, and you never make it.
That's crazy.
I went out to the Amazon for a week, and that was just everything they gave me was a medicine. You're having this raiku and siete races and all this different stuff that is just phenomenal. You gotta go.
Yeah, we gotta take an NCFB trip down.
Let's take a bus.
Yeah.
Let's all go.
It's a long bus ride, damn it. Does it float?
There's no bathroom on this bus.
Oh, that would be bad with all those starches. But back to your story. So you had moved down there to live with your business partner and kind of start to meet farmers and source with the idea that, okay, we're going to come back and we're going to import coffee from them to sell throughout the United States, or specifically.
Honestly, we really weren't sure what we were going to do. We wanted to start this business, and we actually started off with just reading a book, this kind of encyclopedia of coffee, and just trying to catch ourselves up, like what could we realistically do. So we kind of just started exploring, and I actually have the grinder with me as a pretty important part. I lugged down my big old electric coffee grinder, and the first day I plug it into the wall, and it, the different voltage, and boom, busted, and I just took up all the space in my luggage, and done.
And the first time you plug it in.
Yeah, so we start looking all over the city for a coffee grinder, which you can't just find anywhere. There wasn't one. So finally we were in a nice little coffee shop called Puku Puku, and my business partner spots one of these hand grinders that I have right behind me here. And So he's like, hey, can I buy that from you? And he's like, no, but I'll tell you where to get it. And we actually get sent out about 20 minutes away from Miraflores, which is the main district there, to this mother-daughter roasters where, they had a beautiful little shop and they were servicing about probably 15 to 20 of the local cafes, just roasting coffee. And, we kind of just went in and met them and went to buy a grinder, end up staying there for 4 hours, and these farmers are walking in. And, we basically always wanted tourism to be something, a part of what we're doing. And, we basically were like, hey, can we, start a little tour here? And we actually started building out this entire tour. Took about 3 months to get going. We built out this beautiful bar, set up this 2.5-hour course that included, 3 Peruvian snacks and 3 different coffees from 3 different regions. I mean, we kind of looked at that as our, okay, let's figure this out, let's learn. And it was an incredible experience just to be able to kind of dive into the Peruvian coffee scene and make some great connections. But the long-term goal was always, how do we get it back here? How do we export it and sell it in that way? Long story short, that relationship folded. Some things happened, and just kind of actually the opportunity to start exporting came sooner than later. And it was really quite funny. It was actually just off of a cold email we sent to one of our importers we now work with that, I requested a meeting, and we had a placeholder for a website. We, really had no idea what we were doing. And they said, okay, sure, these guys are in Peru, what do they want? And we get in there in beautiful, cafe they have there, and basically in the first 10 minutes, my business partner and the other guy, Oscar, start hitting it off about bird watching. An hour and a half later unfolds, and we get invited out to the countryside to go with them to go kind of learn, meet some farmers, figured it all out. And so we did. We booked our flights, went out with them, and we went to 4 different regions of Peru, 4 different cooperatives, and met 4 different individual farmers. And just our goal was just how much can we learn? Let's just ask questions. One of the biggest things in public health is, pay attention to your group you're trying to work with and ask them. Don't be patriarchal. Really listen and see what they need. So we did that. We set this template of questions together, and the overwhelming answer we got from all of the farmers we talked to throughout that trip was 2 things. They just need a better income. The price of coffee is terrible. And they wanted their story to be told. They felt like they were all alone out there. They have no idea where their product goes once it leaves their farm. There was no connection for them either. So, they literally just gave us the idea of what our business model now is. So about a month and a half later, we kind of put a plan together. We defined how we were going to do that. We flew a photographer down to from Honduras to Peru, because my business partner has a lot of great connections in Honduras, and this guy Naun, rock and roll Naun, he's an incredible photographer, and he just does great work. So we brought him down, and we ran the same route, went back to 3 of those farmers, basically pitched our idea and said, hey, look, we want to tell your story. We got a photographer here. We had this long set of questions, and this is what we want to try to do. We want to help boost your income by connecting people to you and your story and your coffee. So we laid it out that we'll pay a 50% bonus above the market rate directly to you, because many things like organic, fair trade, in the same way that coffee has to take many steps to get to you, those certifications takes many steps back to get to those communities, and the money actually never really ends up back into the hands of the farmers. So
fair trade isn't really fair.
That's a whole topic,
right? I know.
So we
just to put that really simply, meaning if the market rate for a pound of coffee directly from a farmer is $1, you're going to give them $1.50 right there.
Right, exactly, and that's actually exactly where the price is right now. It's terribly low.
Of course, I knew that.
Yeah, you did. You're on top of your stuff. He's doing his research.
Good guess.
But it's terribly low. Last year when we purchased from Rosa, Daniel, and Emiliano, it was more around $1.40. So that's a huge decrease. That right now a lot of farmers around the world are just going to let their coffee rot on the trees because it's not worth their time to go pick it.
Wow.
They're losing money by picking it at that price because you have to associate their costs. So, we defined that model. It was a great opportunity for them, especially.
And the idea of taking their pictures and telling their story was like as your website exists now, which is, I think I misspoke, but it's Farmers First Coffee. If you just Google that, it'll take you right to your website.
Exactly.
And you have pictures of individual farmers who are actually, that's creating the connection to the coffee.
We've tried to take it even a step further. That interview process was extremely important. It was about 15 specific questions regarding coffee, and then 45 questions more about them. What are your biggest fears? What's your biggest success in life? Just this whole script of, how can we really get to know these people and really share this story in an intimate way. It was really kind of beautiful the way everything's just unfolding by starting that way. So we kind of list their number of family members, their favorite food, their education levels, their community challenges. Trying to take a little bit more of a social approach, which is a little bit of a misdirection compared to where the third wave coffee often goes with, this is the variety, this is the altitude, these are the notes. I mean, we do all that stuff too because it's important, but what's important to us is, where does this really come from, and who's it coming from? And that connection of every single cup you had is connecting you to someone like Simeon or a farmer who grew it. So
I have to even say, even taking a bigger picture and stepping back, I think for most consumers, and I'm not the most knowledgeable coffee consumer there is, you think of like Nicaragua, you think of Honduras, you think of Ethiopian beans, but African beans.
Well, Ethiopian's the birthplace.
Yeah, Ethiopia. You don't. Peru is not a place I think of for coffee growing.
So there's over.
Do you have that? Did you have that on your scope, like a regular?
Yeah. I think I've had Peruvian coffee. Yeah, I think that's.
It's not.
It's known, but
as
it's not
known.
The biggest. Yeah.
There's over 70 coffee producing countries.
Okay.
Peru is fluctuating between number 7 and number 11 of world production.
Okay.
So they are a big player, and what they specifically has made a name for, and another reason Peru was a really great case study and a place to start. They're a leader of fair trade and the leader of organic coffee.
Right.
They're often called accidentally organic because of the vastness of the Andes Mountains. It wouldn't be possible to even get the fertilizers and the certain things they need anyway. Yeah. All the farmers we talk to are incredibly proud to be organic, and they love that, and it's definitely a desire. But again, we assume so much with that word.
Right.
But there's so much more to that story of what that means. You know?
So, and with these coffee-producing countries, they're all regionally close to the equator because that's essentially the climate for growing a coffee bean or a coffee tree.
Right. So you're basically looking at a 12-degree difference above north or south of the equator because coffee can't frost. Okay. If coffee freezes, it immediately dies. So you need a warmer climate, but it kind of needs to be that perfect climate where you don't want it to be too hot either. So it grows at elevation. It grows, you start getting above 1,000 meters is when coffee starts to grow. And, the higher you get, the higher the density of the bean, the less, the more they have to put their resources and nutrients towards that bean to replicate and to survive, which for whatever reason makes coffee taste better. So
sounds like wine. That's
right.
Higher elevation wine. The struggle of the vines and the grapes, they have to dig deeper into the soil to get the richness out, which makes the vine stronger.
Right. Yeah. Which always makes for a crazy ride, man. I swear I was falling off the side of a couple mountains there in Peru.
Yeah,
it's just.
Because I would think at that high elevation, especially like in the Andes Mountains, you're getting frost up there, no?
So at a certain point, that coffee stops. It gets cold for sure, but usually around 40 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit is probably the most it can take.
Okay, right.
So you start getting into, you get to 2,400 meters. That's extremely high and kind of rare. To me, the average is anywhere from 12 to 1,800 is kind of the normal range. It can go higher, but it always just depends on, the closer you get to the equator, obviously, those sorts of things.
Are those coffee farmers, are they farming other products that they can sell, or is it strictly coffee?
There's never an exact same story. Most of them seem to have put most of their eggs in one basket in coffee. And that's where, organizing in a cooperative, getting education opportunities. We see almost all of our farmers now are working to diversify. Simeon from Honduras, just planting avocado trees and wants to buy a couple milk cows with the bonus we paid him this year. Rosa actually was able to buy 2,000 new plants, but they also want to do a little tilapia farm. So they can, put different products right into that local market too, and get a little bit of better return on investment.
Because you can also grow cacao beans there, right? At
Yep.
Similar elevations. I remember
Lower elevation.
Lower
mostly.
elevations? Okay.
It doesn't cross over too much, but Daniel's coffee is a little bit of a lower elevation coffee. That there is some crossover nearby, but again, then the coffee might not be the best of quality when you get down to 800 meters. 600 to 800 is kind of where that cacao grows. And
Okay.
A fascinating process. It's very similar to coffee as well.
Yeah, because I remember when we had Sam Videri on and Sam Ratto from Videri, thank you, it was talking about a lot of similar things in growing cacao and coffee, but yeah, elevation, I guess.
Going back to the conversation, Anthony Bourdain had his Parts Unknown episode in Peru is highly recommended because it will take you through Lima, this wonderful food scene and all these things we just spoke about. But he also goes and kind of explores not coffee but chocolate and cacao farmers, and he asks a lot of these questions of, is it ethical of me to even get into a business like this? Is this something I want to do? And it's really powerful, especially with Anthony's story and the impact he's had on food culture in general.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorites, obviously.
So how does it work with, for lack of a better term, like the struggle against big coffee, right? Like like the Folgers and the General Mills or whatever they're called, and the big brands that come in and I'm just imagining massive acreages of coffee fields, and how does that work with the relationships of the farmers there? And for instance, like, why do these particular farmers, like Simeon here on your package, why does he not get picked up by big coffee, and why is he independent?
So the truth is they normally do. It's about 70% of all the coffee in the world is from small scale farmers, just like the ones we work with. I'm talking anywhere from 5 to maybe 20 acres of land. It's not a big farm. That estate coffee certainly does exist, but it's not where the majority of the stuff comes from. So, Brazil is the largest producer of coffee worldwide. They put out the most by far, and they're the only ones that actually have mechanized it, because all of these farms we go visit is incredibly tough terrain, basically just on a slant. It's raining all the time, and imagine picking coffee with a 120-pound full barrel, and you slip once, and boom, there
You're
goes
off the mountain.
There goes your day's work, and your pay for the day too. So. I'm sure Folgers and those kinds of people get coffee from that, but they're most definitely getting it from the small scale farmers. It's just all going into one pot. So it's more about the hands it takes to get to us, where a farmer only typically has a few options. So, there might be a local guy that will buy it, then resell it. They might be lucky to have a cooperative that they work together to distribute it in different ways, and the more organized they are, they can maybe make relationships with some of the bigger players like Blue Bottle Coffee, or there's a lot of coffee companies. So I would think most of Folgers and these big conglomerates are getting most of their coffee from small scale farmers.
Yeah, but they're
it's
also
just all thrown into a big pot.
And essentially they're driving the cost down because they're buying probably at such large volume that I'm sure they're negotiating with the farmers, and they're saying, well, okay, we'll take all of your crop, but we're going to pay X amount, and they're not getting a fair dollar amount.
Like even Starbucks wouldn't be doing any of those negotiations with the farm level. That's more coming within the importer. So however the importer is getting it, whether they're working with, or the exporter, I should say, whether they're going through the cooperative, whether a Coyote is, selling it again, it's hard to tell.
Yeah.
We spent 8 months in Peru just figuring out what the heck is really going on here, from the way it travels to the different size bags they use. You have X amount of loss here and there, and this whole process is just incredibly difficult to unwind. That part of the problem is there isn't traceability or transparency in coffee that, frankly, I just don't know a lot of times how a lot of people do business.
Yeah, and you guys are hyper transparent.
Trying to be. We're that's the problem we're trying to work on. But the way we kind of talk about it is it's so difficult because these are small scale entrepreneurs, right? They're farm owners. They're working for themselves ultimately, but they have no say in the costs of goods they sell. The C market price, which is basically the price of coffee traded on the New York Stock Exchange, which is basically like a C grade coffee. It's a low quality, but this is basically the scale everybody is put up against worldwide, because it's taking a worldwide look at how much coffee is available. So if the price is really low, or if a farmer asks for a lot of money, they'll just be like, no thanks, we can get coffee from anywhere.
The next guy, yeah.
You know, I need to save my margins. So, you know, they have no say in what they can sell for unless they're able to make a relationship, however that might come to be.
Yeah. I want to talk more about people having a say. I also want to understand more about why your business came to North Carolina and then how it progressed and what you do. But before, we have to talk about somebody who gives people a say, especially that are in the industry and that are moving to the area.
That's right, yeah. Laura Harris, she is a restaurant industry preferred agent. She's a new sponsor of the show. Super cool person in general, highly motivated, and she ran restaurants for a long time. I think it's 17-year history. But now she is selling houses, and she's selling houses to the food community. Anybody could buy a house and get an agent and do this, but what her edge is that she really understands this community, the community that tends to listen to our show. A lot of us are in the food business, and if you're trying to figure out a place to live, maybe your restaurant transferred you from a new city to this place or so, and maybe you're just buying your first home. Maybe you've been killing it on weekends behind the stick, bringing in $500 a night, and you're like, it's time to buy a house. Well, call Laura Harris at 919-896-2697, and she will not only work with you because she understands your schedule, but she'll make it very easy. Rather than going to 50 to 60 different properties, no one's got time for that. She'll make it all by using technology, by using a lot of information, like interviewing the way you're doing to your coffee farmers. She interviews her customers so well that she can eliminate so many things and just make it more efficient. So because she's a partner with the show, she's sponsoring the show, there is a specific website you can go to. It's ncfbhomes.com. And from there, you'll be able to find all the information you need. Again, it's Laura Harris, your restaurant industry preferred agent. You can call her at 919-896-2697 or reach her at ncfbhomes.com.
Does she only do purchasing or does rentals as well?
I believe it's just purchasing right now, but keep in mind, too, she is a purchasing agent and a selling agent. A lot of people don't realize that. You can be a buyer agent or a selling agent. She does both, meaning that if you have a house to sell, you get a realtor, and they help you find customers to buy the house. She also can work for you to buy homes.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? So she'll find it. So either way, if you're
Laura Harris. All right.
Yeah. So getting back to, how does this relate to North Carolina? You're from Ohio. You were checking out my JSK Knives shirt.
Yeah, OH.
Josh Scott, my old bandmate, makes killer knives. By the way, not a podcast sponsor, but Josh, throw some money, man, and I'll start talking
about
some
your knives, at least.
Don't throw knives. That's dangerous.
Yeah.
Super dangerous.
Yeah. So, mail knives. Can you even put them in the mail? I don't know.
I guess how I got mine.
Yeah.
By the way, side plug, go to JSK Knives. You can get Josh Scott knives made out of Ohio. They're killer. They're awesome.
So it's pretty funny how we ended up in North Carolina. I think we've been able to move forward over the last year and a half and everything we've been able to create through finding people who share our why, that are part of that tribe, that want to connect, that want to do the best they can and those sorts of things, whether it be the importer, or the roaster we work with. So we decided early on that, if we're going to get off to a good start, I need to be out there talking to you guys, getting out there, knocking on doors, telling people our story. So we strategically partnered up with a roaster. And actually one of the first things we did was, it was in January of last year, just started calling roasters. Well, we were going to start calling roasters, but we only had to call one. We just had a random Google search to a guy named Seth Stevens of Broad River Roasters in Shelby, North Carolina, about an hour east of Charlotte. And we just got along so well, and he just shared the mission and everything we were trying to create. He was just like, we can totally do it. So the conversation propelled. It was a long time coming. I'm not sure if he ever really believed it would be something that would happen. But he just kind of worked through it all and said we can make it happen. And we looked at Charlotte as a good middle ground. My business partner's from Virginia. I'm from Ohio. I'd considered moving down here about 3 or 4 years earlier, just because I have a few family members, a couple uncles in Charlotte as well, that, it's an attractive place. There's so much growth going on. It's a beautiful climate. You got the mountains, you got the ocean. But the only reason was because we found this guy that, we really trusted and we really felt would be a great partner. And, it was just divine intervention maybe that, he was the right guy for us, and brought us to North Carolina. And, I could tell you all about the fancy reports we did of why this was the right market to get into, but that just wouldn't be true.
Yeah. You had a roaster, you had a guy who believed in your ethos, and boom.
And we feel very lucky because there are so many opportunities, especially around Charlotte and in the city, or the state as a whole, with so many people being attracted to these areas, that it's not oversaturated as a lot of places are with coffee.
No, and the reason we have a podcast that people actually listen to is because people appreciate the craft and the not corporate responsibility, not to say that you're a corp, but the humanitarianism in your work and sourcing this great coffee.
Right.
So was the idea initially to create your own coffee, or just to import from these farmers and then sell it off to other people? Because now you have your own brand that you're selling as coffee. What was the idea there?
We started in November of 2016. We formed an LLC. We came up with a name, which is a whole nother story because it wasn't Farmers First. And we just made a list of okay, what can we do to start a coffee company? What does this even look like? I kind of joke we only work with and hire people that don't have any coffee experience, because neither of us really did. We had no idea.
You don't want anyone telling you what to do.
Yeah, it's like, I think in a lot of ways we've challenged preconceived ideas that's gotten us to a unique place.
Yeah.
For example, one thing that's specific about our model that's interesting is there's what's called a cupping score with coffee.
Sure.
You slurp it and you drink it, and you're assigning a value to how good this coffee actually is. The acidity, the body, the balance, the aftertaste, the overall sweetness of the cup, the notes. Are there any defects? Is it moldy? You're looking at all these different things to figure out, okay, how good of a quality is this? So anything above an 80 is considered specialty coffee. So specialty coffee makes maybe 8% of the global market of coffee. It's a small segment, but it's growing quickly. But of that specialty market, almost 90% is between that 80 to 84 range. To get 85, 86, 87 was very...
Hold on, I'm confused with those numbers. You said that 8% of the world's consumption or growth is specialty coffee?
8% of the world's consumption is specialty.
8% of the world's consumption is specialty, but I thought you said over 80%. If you have over an 80 score...
Yep.
Then that's specialty coffee.
Right.
But so 90% of
the 8%
specialty coffee
is
between 80 and 85%.
Okay, now I got you. Thank you.
On the cupping score.
So of the majority...
Sex Panther works 80% of the time,
Every time. So essentially most of the coffee is really great quality, but if you get into the 85, 86, 87s, you're talking pretty high price in a lot of work, and then also a high price to the consumer as well.
Sure.
So our goal was, okay, how can we create a real opportunity and not just go get this great product and share our story and glorify everything like, oh, we're so great, but really we're just buying a great product we're selling to you for $20, $25. We never wanted to do that. We're constantly trying to think of how can we lower the price, how can we get it into more people's hands, because our whole goal is to move volume.
Yeah.
So we specifically have looked for an 80 to an 84 cupping score, and it kind of made everybody, at origin be like, why are you here? You don't have to do any of this work to get that coffee. And it was just like, we want to tell a story. We want to support them. We want to know this stuff ourselves, that, it's really kind of ended up this beautiful things that's starting to unfold from it, because I have a theory that most people don't know anything about coffee. So number one, you give it to them freshly roasted, freshly ground, brewed correctly. It's going to taste way better than anything they know. 85 and above is, more for that distinguished area, which is even a smaller segment of, who's going to buy this coffee at $20 a bag. So by getting that good quality but not great quality, paying them that, and then what we want to do is essentially probably segregate lines from a premium line and also a regular line, where we can make it more and more affordable, yet those great stories or those great coffees, those can be our higher end stuff that now we can go pay someone like Rosa $3, $4 rather than the extra 75 cents. But it's been really awesome to see what 75 cents per pound means.
To them, you mean?
Right.
Yeah.
So Rosa, for example, she's a widow. She lives just outside of the town of San Ignacio in the region of Cajamarca. It's a beautiful place. Another one that's really ascending in the Peruvian coffee scene to that specific region. A lot of great coffees are coming out of there. So she has these 3 sons, Norberto, Juan Carlos, and Emerson. The 2 are a bit older, in their early 20s, and Emerson's a little 5-year-old. So, basically the 3 older ones are working, kind of to reinvest in their farm after the loss of their father, everything like that. So one thing we do that also makes our model different, we pay this bonus 6 months after the fact. So they get their normal payment in the normal way they did, then we show up 6 months later and directly hand them the cash to make sure that this is actually getting to them.
Nice.
So we do that because there's something called los meses flacas, or the thin months. Literally before the harvest, they can't provide food for their families, because if I give you all your money for the year in one swoop, even how much it was, you probably not budget it correctly, especially when it's such a low amount. So they really liked that idea at the beginning. We thought maybe it would be more impactful simply by spreading out that bonus. So it gave us a second chance to get back to visit them again as well and kind of catch up on this story. So Rosa's plan was to buy 2,000 new plants, which increased her farm size by 25%. She built a bathroom for her home, and she's also building a solar dryer to help with the quality and consistency of her great coffee to be even better. Now, we bought 3,000 of 5,000 pounds. And the other week we found this Google article, basically using all our photos. It gave us the credit and everything. But some of her coffee somehow made it to Germany, and it was awarded a gold medal.
Whoa.
And we're just like, that's incredible, So it's like, look at what just the storytelling aspect is doing. It's creating another opportunity that, we have this risk of, okay, maybe whoever that was comes and outbids us for our coffee, for Rosa's coffee. Well, that would stink because people love Rosa. They love her story. Her coffee's great. And we would lose that traction. But that's a win for us because we just created a real opportunity, and her life is greatly improved. And she has over 650 people in her cooperative that we know how to go right next door and go to the next one.
Yeah.
So...
And everybody's price is essentially driven up for coffee, which
exactly.
is a very antithetical business practice, but very much a humanitarian practice.
Right. So, but at the same time...
But you've got to get paid too, right?
Sure. We're most definitely for profit,
Right. And that's not a bad thing that people always say, like, oh, I only support... No, for profits are actually sometimes the best businesses ever, because then you know that there's motivation to get this thing done.
Yeah.
To get it accomplished, right? So that the other farmers actually will succeed, because if you're never seeing a dime for all the hard work you're doing, then maybe you just stop doing it,
Well,
sadly.
I firmly believe that, that's very true for one, but I think small business is the real answer to really creating impact and change, throughout the world.
Well, you pulled up in a Lamborghini
Yep,
Countach,
most definitely.
And so I figured the coffee game's doing well for you. Yeah. And then I saw you throw some money to a homeless guy and say, hey, watch this while I'm...
Didn't he throw the keys there?
Yeah. I'm just kidding.
We're joking. But one thing that completely, I just had this thought, with coffee versus what we talk about often, or my world in wine, is there are so many factors, and in terms of by the time it grows to the time it actually gets in your cup here in North Carolina,
right.
And thinking about that versus wine, and I love the fact that you're so much relating these farmers to these people, because in wine, you farm it, and there's a lot of factors, but you put it in a bottle, so theoretically, there's storage and other factors going in there, but it's going to drink the way it was supposed to taste, and either screw capped or packaged at the winery.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Versus coffee, brewing, pour overs, how you make it, what you mix it with.
It's crazy.
It's so many variables. Thank you.
Yeah.
That wow.
So let's unwind this one here because it is wild.
Yeah.
So starting at the beginning, one coffee tree will produce about 1 pound of coffee once it gets to us.
Okay.
So if you think about that, the 400 million cups of coffee we drink in this country alone, just the amount of work it takes to pick each and every one by hand. Brazil's the only country that mechanizes in that way. The rest of the world is people out there picking this stuff. So, small scale farm will, have anywhere from 5 to maybe 20 people working on the farm. And when they pick it, it's a red cherry. It looks like a cherry or a cranberry almost. That, they pick every one, and you want to pick the red ripe ones at the perfect moment. So, a great picker could probably fill up 3 canisters, which is about 100 pounds a day. And then it goes directly, as fast as you can get it to what's called the most common practice. If you have good investments, you get into Africa, whole nother tangent here, but the wash process. there's two ways to do it: washed versus dried. And quality and consistency, wash process is normally better because it's easier to keep it in the area you need to. So you rush it down to the wet milling plant, which is essentially just two bathtub looking structures outside. So you first put the cherries into a tub full of water, and it sits for 4 to 8 hours, where it will slightly ferment a little bit. It will soften that cherry, and then you push it through the depulper machine, which if you crank on one of those things, it is a lot of freaking work. I did it for about 2 minutes and I gave up and quit and accidentally knocked the whole thing over, and everyone laughed at me, but that's just who I am. So you actually depulp it, which then spits out the seed, and then these cherries, which is also called cascara, can most be utilized to be put back in the field for fertilizer, but you can actually dry it and make a tea out of it. You'll see that becoming more popular.
Our friends from Slingshot make the cascara tea.
Right.
With the cold brew. It's delicious.
Right.
It's a great way to reutilize that product.
Exactly. So then you have the seed, which is very slimy and slippery, and it's actually the sugars. It's called the mucilage. And so imagine you have almost like a pistachio shell that's all slimy that then goes into another tub right next to it for another 4 to 8 hours. You wash it 2 or 3 times to kind of remove some of that, and then you lay it out to dry. So now you have to rake it about once an hour, making sure consistent drying throughout for pretty much the next 2 weeks, depending on the weather, the humidity, those sorts of things. Then it will be bagged up, and then it will be carried either by their backs, by a donkey, or if you're lucky enough to have a truck to throw it into. And that will then be transported to maybe a cooperative if you're working within one. That's where things can get a little bit fuzzy, and then it needs to go to a dry milling plant to remove that pistachio-like shell, and that gets removed. Then you're left with 2 beans. Then it sits for about a month to kind of let that moisture continue to sit a little bit, and then that specialty coffee actually will be hand sorted and remove all the defect beans, typically a job done by women, and then it's basically ready for export, and then it hits the port. Now that C market price we talk about is an FOB price, meaning free on board. So being extremely low at $1 right now is already went through all those steps to get it there.
And that's $1 per pound at that point?
Per pound at that
Even
point.
after all that processing and hours
So
work.
that's where it's $1 per pound at the port. That's not what the farmer would have received. So it's not that black and white. It's crazy.
Which makes me laugh when you think of like the old commercials with Juan Valdez, and he's like walking in the fields of the beans, and then he like puts his hand into a big bag of coffee beans that are fully roasted and ready to go. It's like, you don't pick those. That's not how it happens. There's this massive process that comes from picking the bean to actually roasting it.
Well, it's so funny because we use this different approach when we share this story that people have no idea about that. They just assume, like, they didn't even think, like, oh, I didn't even know how that got to me.
It makes you feel like, how did we all figure out how to do this? Like, really, like, who thought, okay, going to take this fruit from this tree, and we're going to do all this extraction and whatever, and then roast it, and then figure out the way.
And then have a beverage and put milk, and now milk and sugar and all the other stuff.
Right.
Well, that's why I guess Matt Hohler, when he asked for coffee this morning, he's like, I'll just take it black, as is.
And
natural.
It's funny how apologetic everybody is. I'm like, look, I don't care what you do to it. Just drink it. I hate olives. I'm not going to eat them.
That's right.
If you don't like coffee, that's fine. You don't have to. You don't have to drink it black just because I do. I'm not going to judge you for it. It's going to be fine.
That's right.
There's a whole kick that people from listening to the Holderness podcast that I produce. We had Dr. Harriet Hansel on, and she's like this fitness guru, an amazing doctor. That particular podcast everybody should listen to because it like will change your life. Except for me, I listen to it and I still do all the same shit that I always do. But she's like, this whole idea is in fasting. She's like, don't do the whole like eat a little bit every day, like every 2 hours. She's like, that's actually bad for you because your body's constantly producing insulin to break down the sugars that are constantly being put into your body, and it gets to the point where your body now just doesn't respond to insulin and it doesn't really do anything. So what she's recommending is going for long periods of time to not eat. She's like, if you can eat at 7 p.m., then sleep, and then wake up at 7 a.m. and not eat.
I know that's a popular thing now.
And just have black coffee. She goes, if you put any sugar in your coffee, you've messed it up.
Right.
She's like, just black coffee. And she's like, I try to go 12 to 16 hours. I'll go 18 hours before I even have my first, meal of the day. It might be lunch by the time I finally eat. She goes, but I will tell you this, from 8 a.m. to noon, I'll be in a boardroom with people, and I see them all zoning out, and I'm right there, like, popping, ready to go. I said, yeah, but you also do CrossFit like a crazy person, so that might have something to do with it.
It's really interesting, though. I've done quite a bit of it. My best is 24 hours. That it seems so crazy, but, our bodies are so adaptable that it really gets easy, that you don't even want to eat the first thing in the morning, and you don't have those drops. It's a sugar drop. You lack that energy. I need another coffee. You go for something like caffeine or, a carby snack that, will lift you up more materially. Then you need another cup of coffee by 2 because you're having that sugar drop again. It is amazing to sustain energy.
Yeah.
She's right. But donuts are also good too. So it's a constant
no
battle.
judgment. You got to do what works for you, and everything's in moderation. And you live a healthy lifestyle, in general. And I feel like that's going to be sustainable because not eating for 16 to 18 hours. I don't care who you are. You're going to eat exactly. I don't want to be in a boardroom with that person.
So this really kind of actually gets to the depth of my why a little bit more.
Okay.
I've studied exercise science. I was doing personal training down in Florida for quite some time. And it was actually just a random illness that really threw my world in a loop. I literally was just laying there one day, and my buddy points to my legs. He's like, why are your legs so swollen? And I looked down, and they were like twice the size. I was like, I don't really know. The next day comes, and my hands started swelling up, and I just couldn't move my wrist, and my whole body was just extremely inflamed. And I was like, what the heck's going on here? So I went to the doctor. He gave me some medicine. I felt better. 4 or 5 days go by, and boom, comes back twice as bad. So now I'm like...
You got a bad case of the cankles?
I didn't know what I had. I started doing blood test after blood test and doctor visit after doctor visit, and it really just kind of threw me in this loop that I got to the point after 6 doctors and, a couple months that they really weren't telling me any answer, that I was just so frustrated and really losing hope in even that way of thinking that, I really didn't know what was wrong with me. I didn't know how to address it. I didn't know what to do. Yeah. And I tried to just take it on my own, and I did. I kind of just quit going to the doctor. I really started to study and focus on nutrition and health and exercise, and it was already the field I was working in, and I felt kind of cowardice, like, how does this happen to me? I'm supposed to be the healthy one, Yeah. And so that's actually what led me back to go pursue that degree of Master's of Public Health. It was never really about a career. It was about, I started to grow really frustrated with bad information. And when you start diving down into the research, things get really scary, and we start to latch on to certain ideas that we believe in. But, it's really hard to look at it objectively and say, is this really true, or am I just trying to find anything so I feel better, so I'm not sick? I mean, I couldn't sleep at night. My shoulders would go numb. My hands would,
So what was it?
Yeah. Well, what was...
I don't know.
You still don't know?
I gave up finding out. It was basically...
This is the most unsatisfying answer.
I'll give you an answer. It was basically between what the doctors kept trying to call it, and I'm just going to confuse you now, called sarcoidosis, which is a autoimmune granulomatosis disease 90% of the time of the lungs. There was nothing wrong with my lungs. I had a very high elevated calcium throughout the blood. I had this severe joint pain, which it can affect any organ, and that's what they just kept saying, but it really just didn't make sense the more I read into it. The only other thing that could have been, and probably is most likely, would have been Lyme disease. I had a kind of weird rash a week before. I was kayaking, and that's the great imitator of diseases that and that was the one that really trying to figure out what to believe in. You're reading all these funky, Dr. Oz or whoever's giving you the information, but like the clinical research.
I know my dad right now, who probably will listen to this episode at some point. He's a doctor, and he loves getting down and figuring things out like this. He's probably going, Lyme disease. Yeah, it's clearly Lyme disease.
Right. And so treating Lyme disease is a whole nother...
Because he has a fin to some guy.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, so if I had to guess, but I kind of just decided, that I was just, after about a year and a half, that, okay, if I can't control this, sometimes we're just dealt poor cards, and we want to control and we want to fix everything. What if I couldn't? What if this is just what I have to live with? I have no idea. And I just remember kind of drawing back and spending that time studying, and I was in a new city, so, I was kind of alone a little bit more, that I just had a lot of time to reflect and think on things. And, I just remember sitting there and writing and asking myself the question is, okay, what if I had 10 years to live and that was it? And I, had to make an impact on the world, or I had to do something. What would I do with my time that was worthwhile and something worth chasing? And it ultimately led me back to that idea and that connection of that single coffee bean and that cup of coffee connecting me to this other side that, it's what started to bring everything back. And in regards into the helping and the humanitarian stuff, my kind of life philosophy now is by giving the best you have to others, it ultimately comes back to you, and that is what's going to create a healthier community, a healthier world, and a healthier self. In a lot of ways that, it's a little bit more philosophically driven, because we can get so deep into the fasting and eat this and don't eat that and take this supplement at this hour and this time, but we don't know. We're all so different.
And also things affect people differently. So
always. So there's never a black and white, and it was that specific moment, I think, that finally gave me the confidence to pursue this head on, and it was really one of the more challenging times for sure. That I think I got a lot better for it, and it's set me on a path to make me sound important enough to come talk to you two.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you still feel these symptoms?
I feel great. No, I feel good. It was about a year and a half, and there was one. So I started to go into a doctor that did a little bit more naturopath stuff, and he gave me this crazy stuff called natto kinase. So natto is a fermented soybean dish from rural China that he was thinking it was the Lyme disease, and this biofilm bacteria would draw back, and I was going to get sick as hell, and then eventually I'd feel better. But what that natto supplement had was a very high source of vitamin K2, which you just never really hear about because it's not really in anything. But through that fermentation, it's very high that what vitamin K2 does is it redistributes calcium throughout the blood. So this high elevated calcium that was affecting all my bones essentially started to redistribute, and I felt better, and I just kind of moved past it, and it just kind of went away. It was a slow, little bit better, and it was nothing monumental or anything, but that was the only thing that really helped.
Pretty amazing you were able to kind of dial that in to figure that out.
Yeah, I was searching for anything. I was taking 30 supplements and trying to do strict, keto diet and this and that, and I don't think that's attainable for almost anybody. So it was just a soul search in a lot of ways that led me to a grander philosophy of why I'm doing it the way I'm doing it now.
Nice.
Well, let's figure out. So now you have Farmers First Coffee, and you're in Charlotte. You're selling to restaurants, and you're selling to the community. How does somebody get Farmers First Coffee?
Yeah, so we sell it to anybody we can. We do a lot of festivals, events, farmersfirstcoffee.com. We do a lot of online sales. We do an awesome subscription service. It's only $15 straight to your door, always fresh. You get to pick your farmer, your roast, your grind, the frequency, how often you want it. So you'll never run out of coffee. It's always going to taste great, and you're supporting a company doing good things. But our real goal is wholesale as well. So we're partnering with cafes, breweries, specialty markets. We found a kind of unique niche with farm stores. You can find us in a couple of those because, that theory of, connecting with people who want to know where their meats and their vegetables come from, and they want to know this farmer. So we're selling it throughout the country in about 17 states now. We have different offices, things like that. So just trying to be creative and, find ways in a very crowded market of coffee that, everybody's doing it. So, how do we stand out? How do we, have a great quality and, get rid of it so we can partner with as many farmers as we can.
Yeah.
So the first 10 months here, we've partnered with 5 farmers, 3 from Peru, 2 from Honduras. In the next 10 years, hopefully 500 will be that goal. That's what we'd love to create.
Yeah, so if you're out there and you want to get Farmers First Coffee, go to the website.
Yep.
Say it again.
Farmersfirstcoffee.com.
Farmersfirstcoffee.com. And like you said, what's cool is you can pick your farmer.
Yep.
If you get your bag, you'll see, like we're looking at the bag of Simeon's coffee, and you see his picture there. You can go on the website and read about the farmer that you want their coffee, and it's essentially you're almost supporting them directly.
As much as possible,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. So even further, you want to come down and meet them. That's the coolest part. So we have a lodge down in Honduras that's actually also a microbrewery.
Whoa.
in the middle of the jungle. We're going to have a super awesome deal. You know, it's going to be extremely affordable. You take care of your airfare, 3 nights, 4 days for 2 people. You know, it's going to be right around $700 or so. So we're going to sell the trip for $600, and that's also going to include a year-long coffee subscription with it. So definitely be on the lookout for that.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
You know, we have even an extended trip, 6 day, 7 night. You could actually come meet Simeon. We're launching Anna's Coffee next week. She's our 5th partner farmer. Incredible woman. She's on the board of directors of the cooperative. She leads or participates in about 4 community organizations. Very much just challenging the role of women in coffee and you know, a woman in their community as well. You know, very much a leader. You know, and even someone doing all of that work has never had an opportunity to get a better price. So we actually paid that bonus out directly to her last month. We were, you know, back visiting, and you know, she showed us the house she's been building for 2 years that she's going to hopefully be able to finish off now, because that's how she wants to invest that money.
Very cool. Well, listeners, go to farmersfirstcoffee.com and check out, obviously, for your own personal coffee, but then go to Honduras. That sounds awesome.
Does sound. Stay at a microbrewery and have a great time. Yeah.
It's a beautiful place.
Well, Matt, thank you for sharing your story. It's great to meet you. For those of you out there that drink coffee, get yourself some Farmers First coffee. Go online and order some, as Max said, and you will drink very merrily.
Thanks for listening to the NCF&B podcast. And if you've stuck with us this long, review us on iTunes, and remember, 5 stars are encouraged.